Cycling has become an increasingly popular activity. Unfortunately, our roads and many drivers have not entirely adapted on the road, and there have been an increasing number of reported crashes involving cyclists. Joining us this evening is McLeish Orlando's Kate Mazzucco to guide us through this situation if ever we are involved in a crash. Welcome to What She Said. What do you do if you're involved in a cycling collision?
If you're a cyclist and you've been involved in a collision, I think the first thing is to, if you're able to, make sure you're in a safe place. So if you can get yourself off the roadway, certainly do that and ensure that your safety is maintained. And if you're not able to move, see if you can get bystanders in the area to certainly assist you in ensuring that where you are on the roadway is a safe place to be until the police and the ambulance arrive. The next thing, of course, is to call 911 or ensure that someone around you has, because you do want the police and the medical professionals to arrive on the scene. And then if you're able to, you want to gather as much information as possible. And it may not be possible depending on your physical injuries. And certainly you could ask a witness or a bystander to assist you. But you want to gather the information that's going to assist you down the road in the event that you need to make a claim.
Is it the same or is it similar to if you have like a fender bender with someone and you both know it's like no fault insurance so that you walk away? If you don't think you're physically hurt, so should you still be gathering all this information?
I think it's wise to always gather the information, and in part because you don't know, sometimes minimal damage on property, it doesn't look like a lot at the outset, but then you go to get an appraisal and it's quite a bit more than you expected, and perhaps you want to initiate a claim for that. Sometimes collisions that don't seem as significant, you maybe don't feel the effects of it yet because in part you're in shock. But certainly, you always want to follow up with a medical professional, get things checked out. You may have symptoms show up later that day, maybe the next day. Follow up on those new symptoms and make sure you're reporting them. But I think you might as well get the information at the outset because it's much harder to try to track it down after. And if you don't need it, then that's fine. You can put it away and not refer back to it. But that way you've got it in case you do need it.
So what compensation is available if, in fact, you did sustain injuries?
So if you sustained injuries, as would be the case whenever if there's another vehicle involved, you would have access to accident benefits, and those are benefits that are available to someone that's been injured in a collision with a car, and they are available regardless of fault, okay? And there's different benefits that you can have access to, and the amount of benefits available to you and the type of benefit will depend on the severity and the nature of your injury.
And where do those benefits come from? Is that from your insurance as a cyclist?
So as a cyclist, if you also have an automobile and you have insurance with your automobile, you're going to apply to your own auto insurer. But if you are a cyclist who does not drive, you may be, depending on the situation, whether you're listed as a driver in someone else's vehicle as an occasional person on that policy, you can potentially access that policy. You may also be able to access the policy of someone that you may be dependent on if you're dependent on them for care or for finances. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have any of those options, you're actually turning to the insurance company of the driver that struck you, of the vehicle that struck you.
What if you, as a cyclist, strike someone, though? Like if you're not paying attention and you hit a person, a pedestrian. I see lots of cyclists that sort of hop up onto the sidewalk and turn around, and it's like, you're not meant to be here, and you're going fast. What if they hit someone?
Certainly, if a cyclist hit someone else and that individual was injured, that individual, they wouldn't have access to the accident benefits because it's not involving an automobile, but they would have access to potentially a lawsuit against that individual. And the question then becomes, is there an insurance policy that will respond on behalf of that person? There might be a homeowner's policy that will respond because typically that's one of the early questions you ask because if you're going to pursue litigation, you want to make sure that there's some form of insurance policy that can pay out at the end of the day. And so that lawsuit is the other option available to cyclists, right? So you have your accident benefits, which is the no-fault system, but you also have the option to sue if the vehicle that struck you was at fault, even if it's just partially at fault.
What do you do if your bike is damaged?
So if your bike is damaged, you're going to want to make a claim to the insurance company for the driver, and that's if the driver's at fault, though. So you're going to want to get your bike appraised, take it to a bike shop, get an appraisal for the work that needs to be done, and you're going to contact the insurance company, again, for the driver that struck you, and that's if that driver's at fault. And then you're going to deal with the adjuster and work out that deal. Something to be very careful with, though, is they will likely ask you to sign a release if you negotiate a deal with them. And you want to make sure that that release is restricted only to the property damage claim. Because in the event that you suffered injuries, and that maybe they haven't quite crystallized yet and you're not quite too sure whether or not you're pursuing that claim, you certainly don't want to close that door by signing a release, and which would prevent you from pursuing a lawsuit against that individual if you suffered personal injuries.
And what if the cyclist is at fault in terms of the damage to their bike?
Then they're going to be on the hook for their own property damage.
So where can people get more information about bike law? I didn't really even realize there was a specific, I thought it had wheels, it would come under the Highway Traffic Act.
So the Highway Traffic Act is going to cover, certainly it sort of gives us our rules of the road, right? So in terms of those would be, you can get a ticket for in terms of how you operate your vehicle or how you operate your bicycle. But bike law, there's a Bike Law Toronto and Bike Law Ontario is a wonderful organization. It's actually a network of lawyers across North America, and they are working to make sure information is made available to cyclists. So they've got Bike Law Toronto has a wonderful question and answer sort of section on their website, which has a lot of useful information. So that's a wonderful resource for cyclists to check out. And Cycle Toronto is another group in Toronto that has a lot of valuable information on their website.
What are the rules about riding on the sidewalk? Because it never bothers me when I see children on small bikes riding on the sidewalk, but when I see, racing bikes like jump up and hop on just to avoid, at bad traffic at an intersection, I go, that's got to be illegal.
Yeah, no, the bikes are not, adults riding bikes should not be operating them on the sidewalks, and certainly they are required to follow, I'll call them rules under the Highway Traffic Act, but those rules are obviously in place so that people that are using our roads, whether you're a cyclist or a vehicle, there's predictability to what people are doing because we're all sort of following the same set of rules.
Well, I'm going to be hated here by some of our listeners, but I daily see cyclists who would be dead if cars didn't have really great brakes. I mean, they flaunt the rules. They become pedestrians, as Kate said. I see them go through red lights on a daily basis. What can motorists do about that? Is there any reporting mechanism?
Certainly I think we've all seen cyclists that are not following the rules of the road, and there are good cyclists and there are cyclists that are not driving up to the standard that they should be, just as there are vehicles, right?
Exactly.
People follow the rules of the road as an operator of a vehicle and people that don't. But in terms of a reporting system, I'm not aware of any sort of formal reporting system that's in place.
Do you think that the laws are going to change somewhat as we get more and more bike-friendly, which is a good thing?
Certainly, we have groups in Toronto and in Ontario that are advocating for changes. They're talking about vulnerable road user laws that would cover not only cyclists but pedestrians or anyone else that's on the roadway that's not in a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And really, we could probably do a whole show on that topic. But essentially, where a pedestrian or someone not in a vehicle is seriously injured or killed on a roadway, they're talking about having additional penalties added when the driver of the vehicle at fault is pursued under the Highway Traffic Act. So that would include perhaps revoking licenses, having driver training, community service hours, and also requiring that driver to attend the sentencing hearing where they're going to have to hear victim impact statements so they can truly understand what has happened because of the error they've made on the roadway.
Share the road. Well, for anyone looking for a great personal injury lawyer, where can they reach you or one of your colleagues?
You can find us at McLeish Orlando, where we've got our website online with all of our contact information.